LAPD homicide detectives Richard Deanda and Glenn Ackerman are on the verge of solving a brutal double murder. Playboy Playmate of the Year Dorothy Stratton is found dead in West LA, lying next to her estranged husband, Paul Snyder. It's a cruel end to the 20-year-old starlet's dreams.
You know, living in Vancouver like she was, and didn't really imagine a life any bigger or more fascinating than that. This beautiful girl plucked from obscurity, coming to Hollywood and becoming rich and famous.
LAPD detectives Deanda and Ackerman believe this was a murder-suicide. And it's up to them to finally piece together what happened.
Through the course of the investigation, we ruled out every suspect, and it became self-evident that Snyder had shot Dorothy.
But to seal the case against Paul, they need hard evidence. The gun at the crime scene is coated with blood. There are no fingerprints to link Paul Snyder to the murder weapon. But when the detectives interview housemate Patty Lerman, she confirms it was Paul Snyder's gun.
One time we had a barbecue party at our house, and one of his friends was there that had a pistol, and Paul was saying that he wanted to get one because he wanted to have one in the house for safety.
Detective Deanda chases down Patty's lead and gets his first piece of solid evidence against Paul Snyder.
Snyder found a shotgun being advertised in one of these throwaway papers and purchased the shotgun just a day or two before the murders.
Now Deanda knows Paul bought the murder weapon and what triggered him to use it.
We finally were able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and figure out exactly what happened the day of the murder-suicide of Snyder and Dorothy Stratton.
Paul! You here?
The events of that terrible day begin with Dorothy arriving at the house to meet with Paul, as he had requested.
She came over sometime around noon or just before noon. The only person in the house was Snyder.
I have your money. It's in my purse.
She brought $1,000 to pay him some money, and that probably triggered the event.
I mean, Snyder is being slowly edged out of Dorothy's life, basically told to get lost, and here's some money. Is like sort of the ultimate insult.
$1,000.
Detectives Deanda and Ackerman believe Dorothy also tells Paul she and film director Peter Bogdanovich are in love and want to get married.
I love you. He loves me too, okay?
Snyder was certain that he was going to lose his meal ticket and that he would have nowhere else to go. So he was desperate.
I think Paul is out of control at that point. He could not see a happy ending.
For the final act, Paul Snyder forces himself on Dorothy.
Get undressed.
Please don't do this.
Now be close. Take it off. Come on.
I think that Paul Snyder was exercising his last bit of control over her.
Come on.
Evidence at the crime scene paints a terrifying picture of the moments that led to murder.
On the sex apparatus, there is medical tape. It is apparent that she was strapped to it. I can see that there's blonde hairs similar to what Dorothy's hair is, where the tape pulled off. It was apparent that after they had sex on this apparatus, that Snyder had taken the the tape off, and she sat on the bed.
Oh, that's shit. How you turn this thing down, baby? Which one?
The physical evidence shows that after he killed Dorothy, Paul was struck by the reality of what he had done.
His handprints were on her, and blood was smeared on her with his hands. He may have been holding her in remorse of what he did, and then shot himself.
I was trying to see how it turned down last night. Yeah.
I think he gave up. I think a combination of Dorothy and he wasn't going to really have a career. I was called by another playmate.
I turned it down.
And we both just started crying. Believe
It was really sad 2 years ago. I was really lost after that for a while. And it's sad for both of them to be gone, but Dorothy had a whole career ahead of her.
Dorothy Stratton is laid to rest at West Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles.
What could have been considered a Cinderella story turned out to be a tragedy. This beautiful girl plucked from obscurity, coming to Hollywood and becoming rich and famous. That would have been a nice ending, but it didn't end that way.
The death of Dorothy Stratton is a tragedy. At the end, it takes comfort in concludes beyond any doubt that Paul Snyder was the killer.
Working the homicide is really because the hours you put in and the hard work you put in, it truly is a passion.
She was one of the most photographed women in the world. It was that celebrity to shine a light.
She was the first royal to actually embrace an AIDS patient. She said to me, if I can make a difference to one person every day of my life, I'm going to say it on the end.
The press was relentless. In public, Diana was all smiles, but behind the castle wall, a distress. A difficult childhood.
She said when I was born, I was unwanted.
Public and disastrous marriage.
So I was absolutely devastated to realise that this fairy tale romance was not a fairy tale romance.
She's looking to be loved again. She just wants to be embraced.
Now, private moments shared by those who knew her.
I said to her, it's fitting, isn't it? He said, so many years in this palace, and now we are here at the end. Just the two of us.
This is Princess Diana, behind closed doors.
Hi guys. Hope you're enjoying this show. I'm gonna get out of here and close the door so Ronnie can stop coming in my live. Love y'all so much. Getting ready to cook my breakfast, y'all. My dinner. So I'll be going live about around 8 o'clock. I'll be making some cornbread, some collard greens, some pinto beans, and some over rice and cracking cornbread and a meatloaf. So, want to know how to cook those things? Not get like this other style? Then join me at 8 o'clock, 7 or 8 o'clock. But we're just taking a small intermission, trying to make it look like it's a theater in here. My special lights that I designed. If you want some, I'll have an emergency next time. But listen, bam, there you go.
July 29th, 1981, millions descend on London for the event of the century.
This is the royal wedding of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales to Lady Diana Spencer, who in just a few hours will become the Princess of Wales.
I think this is what the world and the country needs. Right? It's marvelous.
It was a national fairy tale, an international fairy tale.
The wedding of the world's most eligible bachelor, Prince Charles Philip Arthur George of the House of Windsor, to Lady Diana Spencer.
That was the sort of magic, the sort of pomp and circumstance that surrounded this fairy tale. I mean, everyone wanted to believe that this was Cinderella come to life.
Hundreds of millions tune in worldwide, setting the record as the most watched wedding in television history.
You set your alarm and you woke up at the crack of dawn to watch this wedding.
And when the newlyweds emerge on the royal balcony at Buckingham Palace, the crowd erupts in cheers. The nation and the world are ever hopeful for the heir to the British throne and his new bride. As she begins her royal journey, Diana is all smiles. There would be no way to foresee just 16 years later how tragically this fairy tale would end.
I've just been handed a bulletin. Paris. Princess Diana, who'd been striving to build a new public and private life after her turbulent divorce, died Sunday from injuries in a crash that also killed her companion.
August 30th, 1997. Princess Diana and her recent companion, Dodi Al-Fayed, are in Paris for a romantic evening. Just before midnight, after finishing a late-night dinner, Dodi and Diana decide to head back to Dodi's apartment, less than 2 miles away, to spend the night. To elude the press, Dodi comes up with a plan. His team stages a car out front for the paparazzi, while he and Diana leave out a back door.
They sped away into the night.
But the paparazzi catches on and is in hot pursuit.
They were pursued, absolutely hounded by the press, trying to get up close, take photos.
In a dangerous high-speed chase, the driver, Henri Paul, approaches the Pont de l'Alma tunnel and once inside, loses control.
The car collided with a pillar, and that was it.
The violent collision kills the driver and Dodi Al-Fayed instantly. Emergency responders frantically try to save Diana's life, but nearly 4 hours later, all hope is lost. The grim news travels across the world.
It ended in Paris last night when the 36-year-old princess died in a violent car accident.
That can't be true in a car accident. How?
Diana was perhaps one of the most photographed and famous women in the world. But long before she was a princess or a fashion icon or a humanitarian, she was a little girl. One whose unstable childhood was filled with self-doubt and pain.
She said once, when I was born, I was unwanted.
On July 1st, 1961, in Sandringham, England, Diana Spencer is born into an aristocratic family with a lineage that goes back centuries. The marriage of her father, Earl Spencer, and mother, the Honorable Frances Roche, is already on the rocks.
She had a miserable childhood.
When Diana is 6 years old, her mother leaves their home and settles in London.
She was raised by a series of governesses.
Diana's parents divorce and engage in a bitter custody battle.
Diana and her brother were given into the custody of the father, which was very rare at that time. Her parents' divorce was a very, very powerful event. It was the most devastating event of her young life. And the fact that her parents had a most acrimonious divorce, and of course the 4 children were involved in this tug of war.
I think she always felt sort of that she was slightly alone and she didn't have much self-confidence.
And I think Diana always blamed herself, that she was the cause of the breakup of her parents' marriage. And that never left her.
Diana's father remarries, but she is not exactly fond of her new stepmother, Rain Spencer.
Diana's relationship with her father was probably most influenced by his remarriage to Rain, and she wasn't a very popular stepmother, putting it mildly.
Diana and Charles even had a nickname for her. They called her Acid Rain.
Diana had a very interesting childhood because she was both highly privileged and highly disadvantaged at the same time. She was highly privileged in that she was the daughter of an aristocrat. At the same time, emotionally, it was one of those sort of English aristocratic, rather neglectful upbringings, where the children were treated a bit like the dogs and horses. They had to, to some extent, bring themselves up.
With their parents living separately, the Spencer children are often shuttled across the country.
They went on their own on trains to stay with their mother, who was by then living, really a long way away on the west coast of Scotland.
Though fractured, Diana's family has deep roots in the British aristocracy. Her father, the Earl Spencer, was an officer charged with the noble task of caring for the House of Windsor's horses.
Earl Spencer was an equerry to the royal family and accompanied the Queen and Prince Philip on one of their world tours.
Both of Diana's grandmothers served the Queen Mother in an official capacity.
The grandmothers were both ladies in waiting, so this was a very well-connected part of the royal circuit, this family.
At school, Diana is well liked, but not the strongest student.
Diana was no genius at school. As a pupil, she was not in the top rank.
She was distracted by what was happening at home, and when she was at school, particularly her junior school, when she was younger, she ran the animal corner and, looked after the guinea pigs and the hamsters and was very concerned that they were all being taken care of. So she was sort of looking after other creatures.
After leaving school at 16 years old, Diana struggles to find her purpose.
She lived in central London with a couple of friends in a flat that was actually bought for her by her mother.
Very, very kind, very thoughtful towards other people, very generous, a very good friend.
She worked as a cleaner, and that was one of the reasons why people found her easy to relate to. That although these don't add up to a profession, she had a bit of real life experience and didn't seem too stuffy to get her hands dirty, really.
She did a lot of babysitting. She did a lot of cleaning for several friends. She'd love to put all the gloves on. She was quite fastidious about that. She had no great ambitions then.
Diana gets a part-time job.
From the minute she walked in, you could tell that she had a really genuine love for young children, particularly the very small ones. And anyone who arrives with a baby is guaranteed that she will be there to feel the baby.
And this love of children will eventually bring Diana to the doorstep of American Mary Robertson.
I knew her over 18 years, and I would say her essential character never changed over that period of time, even with the stresses and the fame and the heartbreak. She was always that lovely, innocent teenager.
When her husband's job lands them in London, Mary calls an agency for part-time help with her son Patrick.
The only part-time nanny they had on their books was a young woman named Diana Spencer. The name meant nothing to me at the time. Her references were excellent. She was described as sweet-tempered, wonderful with children, and willing to do whatever she's asked. Thought that sounded great.
Mary invites Diana over to discuss her potential duties.
She came over for an interview, and this vision turned up on my doorstep. Perfect skin, big blue eyes, great hair, modestly dressed, and just as polite and well-mannered as she could be. She answered my very few questions about hours and pay rates and availability, but she primarily played with my son, just totally focused on him, just reaching out, very tactile, very cuddly, and it was just a match made in heaven.
Diana gets the job, but never mentions her lineage. It would be months before Mary begins to put the pieces together.
One day she told me that she had taken Patrick over to play with her sister's little girl in Kensington. What she did not tell me was that Kensington meant Kensington Palace, where her sister and her husband lived, because Diane's brother-in-law was private secretary to Queen Elizabeth. She clearly did not want me to know who she was. She must have found it probably amusing that I had no idea who she was.
The plan works until one day, Mary discovers a bank slip left behind by Diana.
Bank deposit slip was from a bank that I realized was the bank for the royal family and the aristocracy. I could not have opened an account there. And it was stamped with Lady Diana Spencer. I finally did ask her about it. I handed the slip back and saying, well, this must have fallen out of your purse. And all she did was say, oh, that. Would you like me to take Patrick to the park now?
That August, Mary's family and Diana take separate vacations. Diana just tells Mary that she's off to Scotland.
She didn't mention that she was going to be at Balmoral Castle with her sister and the Queen and the Queen's private secretary.
Upon her return, Diana shows up for work, but her mood has changed. Suddenly, there is a level of seriousness and a sense of urgency.
She came in and said to Mrs. Robertson, I have to tell you something. And I said, all right, go ahead. And I was blowing my hair dry, putting on makeup. She was standing in the doorway of my bedroom with Patrick on her hip. And she said, no, I want your full attention. Okay, put down the hair dryer. And she said, when you leave for work this morning, you will notice that there are photographers and reporters at the end of the news. And I said, what have you done, Diane? Have you robbed a bank or something? She said, no, I spent last weekend up at Balmoral Castle. And I said, was it with Prince Andrew? And she said, no, it was actually, it was Charles, but his mother invited me. And I just burst out laughing at the thought of her, referring to the Queen of England as a friend's mother. And I did say, oh my gosh, do you think anything's going to develop? And very regretfully, staring down at the floor, she said, no, I don't think he'd look twice at me. After all, he's 31 and I'm only 19. And I said, I'm not too sure.
The royal family has been looking for a suitable princess for the Prince of Wales.
The whole point of the monarchy is to perpetuate. The marriage isn't massively significant, but the births, if you like, are the most significant of all, because those are the hopeful moments. Those are the moments where you can see, here's the next generation. These are the people who are going to carry it forward. So absolutely huge for him.
By the time he's 30, the world's most eligible bachelor undoubtedly feels the pressure to find a bride and produce an heir.
It had to be a Protestant, Anglo-Saxon, preferably virgin, but also an aristocrat. And Diana fitted the bill. She was from a family that was very well established, close links to the royal family. As a small child, Diana was playing with Prince Andrew and Prince Edward.
While dating Diana's elder sister in the late 70s, Charles attends a dinner at the Spencer home, Althorp.
Diana showed him around the picture gallery. And, she was young and just in awe of this man who was 12 years her senior, dating Sarah. That romance fizzled out, and fast forward a couple of years, and after a polo match in Sussex, they were having a barbecue, and Diana was sitting on a hay bale, he was sitting on a hay bale, and they were just chatting. And obviously it touched something in Prince Charles, and maybe he thought, oh, she's a young girl, but she's obviously got a mature head on her. And he invited her for dinner in London, and from there on the kind of romance gently continued.
Aficionado. I'm a fashionista.
Sneakerhead. Metalhead.
Yeah. I'm your flower.
Galen. I'm a 30.
I'm whatever this is.
Obsession has many names. This is ours. The new Lexus IS. All in on the coast of Avon. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Escape. Travel to other lives and other minds. The mystified and the complex. The beautiful and the twisted. The lucky and the tragic. Unlock the mysteries and secrets. Escape to the world of the famous and the infamous. Escape to real.
Oh, welcome back. Feet off the coffee table, please. Hey, you know, Reels is where you'll always find real lives, real stories, and real celebrities. But did you also know it's a real oasis, if you will? Just watch.
Escape. Travel to other lives and other minds. The mystifying and the complex. The beautiful and the twisted. The lucky and the tragic. Unlock their mysteries and secrets. Escape to the world of the famous and the infamous. Escape to Reels.
See? Our time's up already. Thanks for watching Reels on the Roku channels. And now it's back to our show. Bye now.
By 1980, Lady Diana Spencer and Prince Charles are spending enough time together to draw the attention of royal watchers at the British tabloids. Diana reveals to close friends the relationship is heating up.
Diana clearly was head over heels in love with Charles, and certainly the idea of Charles. After all, he was the most eligible bachelor in the world. And I think she was hopeful.
While Diana and Charles are courting, Diana's employers, the Robertsons, are transferred back to New York.
So Diana came over and packed up all of our stuff, all of Patrick's toys and clothes, got everything boxed and labeled so that we were ready for the move.
It's a tearful goodbye, but before they go, Diana hands them a special gift.
She gave us a beautiful leather-bound photo album, including a handful of photographs of her with Patrick.
Only a month after their move back to the States, Mary receives a handwritten letter from Diana.
She sent us a lovely letter telling us how much she missed us, how much she missed Patrick.
Meanwhile, Diana and Charles are getting more serious. Diana wants desperately for everything to work out.
Before we left, she had explicitly said, if this doesn't work, I won't be able to show my face.
From the United States, Mary keeps up on Diana through the press, hoping her friend lands her prince.
I was on pins and needles. All of my friends were looking on the news and newspapers and so on.
On a winter day in February 1981, Mary gets some news.
I got a phone call from a friend in London, and all she said was, your girl made it. And I just literally shrieked with joy.
Why you say peace?
But I think she's just the right person for you.
The press were absolutely focused on her and fascinated by her and followed her everywhere and wanted to put her on their front pages.
How were you coping with all the press attention? Whereas you can see, you can tell. You're bearing up with it quite well, though, because it must be quite a strain with all of us after. Well, it is, naturally. Because you were the right thing, it seems to be doing very well. I'm so proud.
And she really was the most famous woman in the world quite rapidly. She was an absolute natural. Not only was she photogenic, she also was very open with the press. They adored her, actually. people referred to her as the Princess of Sales, because if she was on the front, their sales doubled.
She was a lovely girl. She came from a family that the Windsors knew. The Spencer family served the royal family for generations. So that everything should have worked. Everything was there to suggest this would be a brilliant marriage. But it didn't work out like that.
Diana makes some awkward mistakes at the outset, like unknowingly agreeing to pose for a picture that was backlit, revealing her legs through her skirt. But it is Charles who, during an interview to announce their engagement, unwittingly makes what will later appear to be the most prophetic slip.
You can find the worst summer playing field in Edinburgh. Different from those words, because it just delighted and unhappy. I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on. And I suppose you love. Of course. You love me.
Whatever that means. If that doesn't send a dagger to your heart.
And I think from that point, Diana realized he hasn't got it inside him. I think he relies on people. He is very fond of people, but true love?
Did she always know that he didn't love her the same way?
She did. And I think it was clear at that moment that, he was doing this because he was being forced to really, get out there and provide an heir. And he was pressured into marrying Diana.
There were storm clouds, there were warning clouds on the horizon, but nothing that anybody could really act upon. And, for Prince Charles, he was being pushed along down the aisle by the mass media. Because everybody loved this winsome young girl with the rosy red cheeks who blushed all the time, who seemed so carefree and innocent. And there was no real way at that time of backing out.
And Diana has concerns of her own.
She was to some extent left on her own. She moved into the palace, and I think she spent a lot of time on her own, feeling she wasn't sure that she'd made quite the right decision. And already at that stage, there was intense press interest in her.
Amid the engagement hysteria, Diana learns there may be a threat to her relationship.
Did she know at that early point in time about Camilla?
She did.
Diana was involved in Charles's social circle from the get-go. And what is intriguing is that I estimated that they spent some 27 days together before he popped the question, before he asked her to marry him. And during those 27 days, most of the time, his friend, Camilla Parker Bowles, was there.
Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles date in the early 1970s, but that initial relationship is short-lived.
That first relationship would never have been signed off by all of the people who had a say in who he was going to marry. And so neither of them believed that it could go anywhere. And even though he was deeply besotted, he then went away to sea, and while he was at sea in his career in the Navy, heard that she'd gone back to a previous boyfriend, Andrew Parker Bowles, and then that she was getting married, and didn't do anything to intervene, didn't do anything to stop it.
Leading up to his own wedding, royal watchers observe what they feel is clearly Charles' undeniable distress.
He clearly is an unhappy man. And I think you see that in his face. There's no warmth there particularly. And of course, that was because Camilla was on his mind, and he was being forced into a marriage he didn't want to engage in.
This is James. Mom, Dad, this is James.
Okay. James Harrison from Roosevelt High?
The 2021 Toyota RAV4. The RAV for all of you. Lease a new 2021 RAV4 LE for $249 a month for 36 months. Toyota. Let's go places.
What's in Zaxby's new General Tso's sauce? Legendary chicken, legendary sauce. The new General Tso's boneless wings. Only at Zaxby's. Order ahead, drive through, or get it delivered.
Since retirement, I've been trying a lot of new things. The Frank's Red Hot. It's the perfect blend of flavor and heat. Like me. And it's great on all the recipes I've mastered. I put that on everything.
Good morning. Poetry, Matt. We're going to try something different today.
Dogs bring out the good in us. And greed brings out the good in them. Dogs don't know what's good for them. Luckily, you do. Green's dental treatment.
This Coca-Cola Zero Sugar tastes mighty delicious.
Come on, buddy. It has zero sugar.
But it tastes great.
Let's take the break. If you keep lying like this, you'll be a puppet forever.
But it's the honest truth. You'll never be a real boy. It's no lie.
You're right. It's delicious.
Told you. I never lied.
Welcome back to Princess Diana Behind Closed Doors. I'm Natalie Morales. By July 1981, all eyes are on London and the woman the press dubs Shy Di. Thrust from relative obscurity onto the covers of newspapers, Lady Diana Spencer becomes a target of the paparazzi as excitement for her wedding to Prince Charles escalates. Planning for the wedding of the century is underway. India Hicks, cousin of Prince Philip and goddaughter to Prince Charles, gets a special call from Buckingham Palace.
I picked up the phone. I remember my mother clearly saying, your godfather has asked if you'd like to be a bridesmaid at the wedding. And I remember panicking that I was going to have to wear a dress.
A wedding fit for a future queen commands perfection. In preparation for the big day, the wedding party rehearses every move, because Diana's wedding dress will not be finished until the very last moment. The royal wedding party improvises.
Tied around Diana's waist was this endless sheet, this dust sheet, obviously pretending to be the actual train that we were going to be dealing with. And we were shown how to fold it. And there was Diana with this old bit of string around her waist. I mean, the dichotomy was extraordinary.
But with all the wheels in motion, Diana, the future Queen of England, gets a case of cold feet.
On the eve of the wedding, Diana discovered that Charles had given Camilla a bracelet.
Diana said to her sister, I don't know, I don't think I can go through with this. And her sister said, well, you can't back out now. They printed the tea cloths.
Later, Diana receives her own gift from Charles.
She was staying at Clarence House, which is the Queen Mother's London home, and Prince Charles had left her a note and a gift, and the note said, I love you very much, knock 'em dead tomorrow. So she went ahead, but she went ahead full of apprehension, but also full of excitement, and she hoped that excitement and optimism would win out.
Plans for the wedding of the century carry on. Guests from all over the world arrive in London to celebrate.
That's right. Cheers everybody up, to something like this.
We were invited to a party at Buckingham Palace 2 nights before the wedding.
Mary Robertson and her husband are two of very few Americans invited to the exclusive event at the palace.
There was a very long receiving line, and it was just incredible. Diana is at the end of the receiving line, sees us coming. She rushed out of the receiving line, came over, gave me this huge hug. Mr. Robertson, I'm so glad to see you. I can't believe you came. Well, actually, Diana, we wouldn't have missed this for the world. And then she says, Charles, come over. This is Patrick's mummy come over from America.
Leaving Buckingham Palace,
Ladies and gentlemen, the mother and father of the bridegroom, Queen Elizabeth, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip.
The big day has arrived. Hundreds of millions of people across the globe will tune in to watch Diana's Cinderella moment.
Marriage of their son, the heir to the throne.
NBC's Today Show sends anchors Tom Brokaw and Jane Pauley to cover the big event.
We have only a couple minutes to wait before we see Lady Di's procession.
Millions of people woke up early to watch this moment happen, to watch a woman they had never met and likely never ever would meet marry someone who they had never met and likely never would meet. That was the sort of magic, the sort of pomp and circumstance that surrounded this fairy tale.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bridegroom, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, heir to the throne of England.
At Clarence House, the London home of the Queen Mum, Diana and her bridesmaids are dressing for the wedding.
Clarence House was quite a scene, as before any wedding, but particularly a royal wedding, because it was rather extraordinary. And there was one very memorable moment where Diana is in her room and we are all there getting dressed. And she is wearing a pair of jeans and an old t-shirt, and her hair is being done. And that magnificent tiara is brought out of the velvet box and placed on her head. And everybody looked, and this is kind of the transformation moment. And Diana, of course, while having her hair and makeup done, is watching the TV because how fascinating, and she can see all the preparations for the wedding going on and who's entering into the cathedral. And as soon as somebody got in the way of the TV, she said, "No, move, move," very anxiously. She was not going to miss seeing any of that.
At St. Paul's Cathedral, honored guests are arriving and taking their seats.
The wedding guests assembled like Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
We told them who we were, and I was sure that we would be in the back row, probably behind a column, given our relative stature in the crowd. And they just kept walking us up the aisle and up the aisle, and we were actually in the same row as Margaret Thatcher, which just was amazing. We had practically front row seats.
The bride, Lady Diana Spencer, with her father, Lord Spencer. This young woman, just 20 years of age, will become one of the best-known figures of our time. She never again will be able to go on a simple shopping trip or walk through a park, go to a disco, or attend a kindergarten class as she did just a few short months ago.
You know, they run a 25-foot train in that coach, and I think you can see the wheels of it.
No dress in the history of mankind has received as much attention as a royal wedding dress.
The wedding party arrives at St. Paul's. The crowd of thousands gathered outside erupts in cheers.
The whole of England, it felt, had descended on London. Everybody came. The world's press was there, but in excitement and eagerness. And this was, at that stage, a fairy tale unfolding before our eyes.
Despite all the preparation, as Diana steps out of the carriage, not everything goes as planned.
The dress does appear to flow up the steps, and I had underestimated the length of a train. She's being assisted by her attendants, India Hicks.
Oh my God, that bloody train. When she got out, it was a disaster because the train had been crumpled up because the dress was huge. She had her father beside her, and a 25-foot train.
We should be grateful there isn't a strong wind today.
She wore a dress that basically looked like something out of a Disney movie. It was not understated. It was not subtle. I mean, this was a dress to end all dresses. Huge sleeve, a train that went on for miles. I mean, it was, if you asked a 9-year-old to plan their perfect princess wedding, this is what every 9-year-old girl would come up with.
It was an amazing scene on those red carpeted stone historic steps, and this very innocent girl with her father. It was fairly remarkable.
Lady Diana Spencer is about to become Diana, Princess of Wales.
I was thrilled to death for her. I knew how much she wanted this.
But on her journey down the aisle, Diana spots an unwelcome guest.
There she was walking down the aisle, and there's Camilla with her son, Tom, watching the ceremony. So it's really quite a scene, and I think the strange thing is that Camilla was not shy about participating in this.
How comfortable do you think Diana was on that day?
I think she was desperately unhappy already, but she was convinced that she could make him love her.
Diana carries on, with more than 2,000 packed into the cathedral, thousands more listening outside, and hundreds of millions watching worldwide. Lady Diana Spencer reaches the altar.
I think I did look around. I wonder how many other people here actually know Diana. It was just jaw-dropping.
All of us are given the power to be kings and queens of love. This is the stuff of which fairy tales are made.
I totally believed it. I did believe in a fairy tale.
Diana Francis, wilt thou have this man to thy wedded husband?
In what would become a pattern of independence, Diana requests a slight change to her vows.
Wilt thou love him, comfort him, honor and keep him in sickness and in health?
She asked not to have this statement about I promised to obey my husband. It was 1981, and that was the period where the sort of feminism was beginning to sort of embed in some way.
I, Diana Francis,
I, Diana Francis,
take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George,
take me, Philip Charles Arthur George,
to my wedded husband,
my wedded husband,
to have and to hold,
to have and to hold,
from this day forward, according to God's holy law.
according to God's holy law.
When the moment came that they were married, inside the church, everybody's behaved beautifully.
Never to have been my trade.
Outside, you could hear the roar of the nation. The roar, because it was on loudspeakers to the crowds outside. So you had this unbelievable atmosphere inside where you could hear a pin drop, and outside, people going mad and crazy in excitement. And it was an extraordinary contrast.
The Prince and Princess of Wales emerge from the cathedral, and their procession heads toward Buckingham Palace, and thousands of admirers waiting outside the gates. All eyes are fixed on the royal balcony. Finally, the doors open, and the newlyweds greet the adoring masses. India Hicks has a front row seat.
Charles and Diana went out onto that balcony, and the police came forward. It's like a sea, an ocean, just an amazing ocean of movement, of just the crowds coming forwards, and just everyone so excited. The screaming, and the Union Jacks flying, just amazing, absolutely amazing.
The most famous and watched couple begin to live out their fairy tale. But this journey will not have a storybook ending.
Mention always. What they don't know is sometimes they still put on in. This is really beautiful.
How beautiful you are. You're about to do something truly remarkable, astounding, and amazing.
Chapter 1.
Oasis, if you will, just watch.
Escape. Travel to other lives and other minds. The mystifying and the complex. The beautiful and the twisted. The lucky and the tragic. Unlock their mysteries and secrets. Escape to the world of the famous and the infamous. Escape to Reels.
See? Our time's up already. Thanks for watching Reels on the Roku channels. And now it's back to our show. Bye now.
July 1981, Prince Charles and his young bride Diana Spencer tied the knot. Even after the celebrations died down, the international press did not get enough of Diana.
After the wedding, the whole world wanted a piece of Diana. She said to me she was a media toy, she was a pin-up queen, she was a Marilyn Monroe of the royal family. And everybody wanted to pass off her.
Everyone has been breathless at the way Diana has looked. And now she's in her little pink suit, she'll seem even more charming, I think. But I still wish he'd just put his arm around her and give us a little tiny demonstration of public affection.
Put his arm around her, after all. This is not what you call sneaking out of town.
But I've just heard that the worst paparazzis of them all have tried to charter a yacht to follow in their wake.
Is that right?
Even the newlyweds' honeymoon, normally a time for privacy, is anything but for the Prince and new Princess of Wales. And on this trip, an illness Diana privately battles takes a huge toll on the princess.
She was kind of exhausted from the whole build-up to the wedding, and she was suffering from this eating disorder, bulimia nervosa. She would be gorging on ice cream, for example, and then being sick. She would then, have to entertain all the officers of the ship's company. So it wasn't a very private event. It was kind of like an early introduction to what was going to happen in the future.
After 2 weeks of travel around the Mediterranean and Scotland, Diana and Charles returned to their palatial home. But for Diana, it's not all wedded bliss.
Diana lived in Kensington Palace, a wonderful, beautiful place to live in many ways, surrounded with parkland. But it was also intense, 24/7, almost like a prison to her, because she couldn't venture out without being trailed by photographers and all sorts of people who sort of interfered in her daily life.
I think people have this notion that living in a royal palace, there are jugglers, musicians, animals, fire eaters 24 hours a day. But in fact, in royal palaces, this doesn't happen. And it's a pretty lonely place, particularly if you're in Diana's shoes, where, the living arrangements with the Prince of Wales were pretty non-existent. When she was living at Kensington Palace, he was living at Highgrove. And when she was at Highgrove, he was somewhere else, whatever. That's how that relationship was.
And at times, much to Diana's dismay, the Prince of Wales continues to spend time with Camilla Parker Bowles, then married to Andrew Parker Bowles.
It is very clear that Camilla was a figure in his life right the way through, and that was something that Diana was acutely aware of and acutely uncomfortable with.
Despite what many describe as tension between them, it seems Diana and Charles agree on one thing.
A male heir was essential. The laws of primogeniture were intact, and so it was vital that Diana at some point produce a son.
By 1982, Diana is expecting, and the pregnancy is not going well.
She suffered very badly from morning sickness. So physically, she was not in good shape. And she also had the demands of the royal world on her shoulders. And it was just way too much for her fragile body and her fragile mind to take at that time.
Diana would later recount at one point during her pregnancy, she hits a breaking point and threatens to do the unthinkable.
She threatens to hurl herself from the top of the staircase. The Queen is standing there. Princess Margaret is standing there. Charles says, "Oh, you know, you're just crying wolf," and walks away, and she does exactly what she threatened to do, which is throw herself down the staircase. She was injured, didn't harm the baby, but the Queen rushed to pick her up and to call the physician. So it's dramatic, many dramatic moments that I had experienced.
First thing new, little baby.
Less than 2 days after arriving here, Prince, Princess, and Baby Prince emerged to the cheers of the crowd.
It's an emotional roller coaster for Diana. On June 21st, 1982, she becomes the mother to the future King of England, Prince William. Motherhood gives Diana a newfound strength and confidence.
Becoming a mother was Diana's real moment to assert herself and make it clear that there were certain things she was going to do her way. Things were going to be different.
Diana was a mother in a very different style from what the royal family had seen before. She was a very touchy-feely, hands-on mother. Diana broke with tradition by taking her baby with her on her first long royal trip back to Australia when he was quite small. That's something that Queen Elizabeth hadn't done, because of course the royals before that had always come out of a tradition where really Nanny did it all.
And though Diana openly relishes her role as mother to an heir to the throne, she still faces internal battles.
She suffered from postnatal depression, and she suffered from postnatal depression in the public eye. So it was she was trying to work out what she was feeling like whilst having to smile and shake hands and be friendly with people. She found it a very difficult period of her life.
She became worryingly thin early in the marriage and when she was a very young mother. And that was commented on by the press. She looked gaunt, her shoulder blade showed, and she clearly wasn't well in terms of eating, although at the time nobody actually used the term eating disorder.
Despite being a new princess, a new mother, and consumed by doubts about her husband's commitment to their marriage, Diana gets pregnant again.
By the time Prince Harry was born in 84, things were already very, very bad.
We heard at 4:20, the Princess of Wales had delivered her second son.
The next day, the royal couple brings home Prince William's younger brother, Harry.
Entrance to Kensington Palace, the Prince and Princess and their baby arrived from the hospital at speed and swept in without stopping. Then, less than an hour later, Prince Charles left to play polo, something most new fathers would hardly dare to suggest.
When Prince Harry was born, Prince Charles, as she said, got off his polo horse long enough to come and visit, and he didn't seem very enthusiastic. And from that moment, Diana went back into herself and started to exclude Prince Charles from her life.
Escape. Travel to other lives and other minds. The mystified, but the complex. The beautiful and the twisted. The lucky and the tragic. Unlock the mysteries and secrets. Escape to the world of the famous and the infamous. Escape to real.
One of the greatest stars in the history of Hollywood is gone.
She was a very heavy drinker.
This autopsy tells me more about how he lived than how he died.
The fans had no idea what was going on behind the scenes.
but she definitely had an amazing life.
Autopsy on Wheels.
Oh, welcome back. Feet off the coffee table, please. Hey, you know, Reels is where you'll always find real lives, real stories, and real celebrities. But did you also know it's a real oasis, if you will? Just watch.
Escape. Travel to other lives and other minds. The mystifying and the complex. The beautiful and the twisted. The lucky and the tragic. Unlock their mysteries and secrets. Escape to the world of the famous and the infamous. Escape to Reels.
See? Our time's up already. Thanks for watching Reels on the Roku channels. And now it's back to our show. Bye now.
After the birth of Prince Harry in 1984, Princess Diana devotes herself to raising the two sons she adores. In public, the royal fairy tale carries on. But in private, behind the smiles, lies a life of disappointment, pain, and distress.
The lot of England is delighted to watch the future king and his little brother grow up, but their upbringing will not be like the royals born before them.
Until Diana, all royal children were basically raised by governesses and nannies and behind the walls of palaces. Diana put her kids in a nursery school. She made sure that they did the things that all other kids did, and that they didn't really see themselves as entitled.
And unlike prior royal moms, Diana openly showers her boys with affection.
A radical concept within the palace. There are endless images of Diana embracing William, of her rushing to hug William and Harry, of her laughing with them. She was going to be an affectionate, loving, hands-on parent.
Though both very involved with raising their sons, it seems Charles never quite understands Diana's style.
When they used to go to Bill Wyman's burger bar in Kensington High Street, you know, they go back to Kensington Palace, and the boys would say to their father, you know, Papa, we've just been to a great burger bar in Kensington High Street. Because he'd look at his wife and say, why are you going to a burger bar when we've got 3 chefs? The whole point that Diana was making was, look, you can't actually have the children locked up in this palace all the time. You've got to explain to them, show them actually what other children do, what the real world is all about.
As Diana and Charles differ on parenting styles, Diana finds a kindred spirit when Prince Charles' brother, Prince Andrew, marries Sarah Ferguson.
They were quite fun people together. They were actually sort of putting 2 fingers up, as we say, to the monarchy in a sense, because they were mischievous at that time.